Welcome to Gregorian chat.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. Decided to do it on my own
Kia ora.
today. I got a lot of pleasure from doing that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that doesn't make sense. Wasn't very pleasurable for me. Why don't we talk about pleasure?
What a great segue, Dom. Today's podcast is called The Pleasure Podcast.
Boom.
Dom had an alternative title which we scrapped.
Yes. Should I say it?
No. We could tie it in later on.
Okay. I'm just gonna say it. The Catholic Guide to Pleasuring Yourself. But this is called The Pleasure Podcast because this idea of pleasure. I mean, the fact that when I say pleasuring yourself leaves you to not thinking about good things.
Right.
I think that's really the key premise of the whole situation.
Something's
right now.
gone wrong here and we need to right it.
Yeah, because pleasure's good, right?
Yes. Question mark?
I'd say so.
Yeah, just starting the conversation.
Oh.
Well, yeah, I guess it could be. I am interested in what you've been up to lately, Dom.
You are?
Yeah.
Well, what have
Before
I
we
been
just
up
crack
to
straight on
recently?
the topic.
There's a lot going on in my life right now.
Yes.
Just working towards finishing up in the chaplaincy.
So sad. End of an era.
End of
And I
an
don't
era.
mean ERA.
And then trying to trust in the Lord and just be like, I'm definitely going to get into university next year. I don't find out till December. So, mini heart attacks all over the show.
Also known as anginas.
Anginas.
But you'll learn that as a nurse.
Yeah. So, all sorts of craziness going on. Looking at what kind of support I can get going on.
Very cool.
Very cool. How about yourself? What's been going on with you?
So busy.
Yeah?
Well, like having hardly any time to do the podcast. That's how busy I've been.
I know, it's crazy. It's so sad.
But
so sad.
teaching has been very fun.
Yeah.
And also started a brand new band.
Yes.
Very cool, very
I
exciting.
didn't get the invitation.
I haven't stared a Facebook page
Okay,
yet.
whatever. It's fine. Yeah, whatever.
But we will be called The Sations.
Stations. Why that?
S-A-T-I-O-N.
Why stations?
Well, we were like, we need a band name. And my sister's like, what about just a word like sation? So we looked it up. It's an obsolete noun, which means a planting or a growing. And I was just like, it's perfect. A noun that no one uses anymore.
A planting or a growing?
So we're The Sations.
That's beautiful.
Short for sensations as well. Could
Yeah.
be. No. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. But we've had some awesome. Or it's just been like jumping on a moving bus with roller skates on. So we'll see how we go.
You know what?
Brand new projects.
I think lukewarm tea is the way to go.
Yeah?
Who needs to boil a kettle?
Lukewarm tea. Yeah. Well, we're in a bit of a rush because we had to get an SD card for the camera. Sorry, for the recording device.
Yeah.
And we went into this building, and it had 5 levels. And I was like, I'm pretty sure that there's like a music store
we
in this building.
We definitely
And
should
so
have.
we went to level 5, and there was like a completely empty office building. We could have
Yeah.
just had a party in there.
We could have filmed the podcast up there.
Oh, how cool would that
Maybe
have
next
been?
time. We'll go up there next time and see what see what we can get away with.
We also could have been locked in.
Yeah. I think so. It would have been an exciting night. We could have filmed the whole night. And
Call our wives and tell them.
yeah, it was nice knowing you. Another cool thing that happened recently is I got onto the radio, and if you listen to Live FM, I did like full on plug Gregorian chat.
Amazing.
I was on the fact battle on Live FM, and I picked Josh to win. I mean, the animal facts always win, and that's it. I kind of didn't want to fall into that trap, but it was just a cooler fact.
Deep down, you know that is why you're watching Gregorian chat.
Yeah,
Because of Dom's plug on.
Yeah, so
FM.
if you haven't listened to Live FM, or you haven't listened to Gregorian chat, welcome, and you should go and listen to Live FM.
I mean, I'm sure you'll get a lot of pleasure out of it.
Oh,
Segue.
speaking of which, so we decided to talk about pleasure this time round for the podcast because I think it is it's one of those things that's like people are either overindulging in it or completely avoiding pleasure because they think it's evil. But my question to you guys who think it's evil, if it's evil, why would God make us have pleasure? Why would he create it? Huh?
So I guess you've got like the person who's living in complete vice versus the stoic.
Yes. Or as Christopher West calls it, the addict and the stoic. Someone who's ruled by pleasure and someone who avoids pleasure completely. Both are wrong. We want to be more like the mystic, as Christopher West calls it.
So eating banoffee pie, where would that fall on this
Oh,
scale?
very much the mystic.
I like how you
Banoffee-
just substituted addict for mystic.
Well, no, the mystic is just the banoffee pie is the perfect mix. This is the perfect dessert, 100%.
Explain yourself.
Well, actually, no. The banoffee pie itself is nothing wrong with banoffee pie. The
But
problem
you just
is,
call it the perfect dessert. There's a lot
Well,
of
yeah,
difference
yeah.
between those two statements.
well, it is the perfect dessert, and that's a statement in itself. That's a story from the time. Linking it to what we're talking about,
All right.
banoffee pie itself is neither. Was definitely not stoic.
No,
it's
let's
delicious.
just put that on the table.
It has the potential to be an addict,
Yeah.
but Christopher West says the addict is closer to the mystic than the stoic.
Interesting quote, Don. Definitely ties in with what we're talking about.
Yes.
No, because I think I have, for many years, at least when I started getting into my faith in a big way and into philosophy and theology and all this kind of stuff, I started veering towards more stoic. You know, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, don't do this, all that kind of stuff. And I guess, I don't know. Obviously, I still have vices. But I think, I guess
do?
I've veered more towards the addict side. You know?
I have been
using
meaning to talk to you
anything,
about that. Yeah. No, I mean,
It's an intervention.
yeah, this is not a podcast.
No, but I'm just saying, like, now I feel like I'm less of a stoic about certain things.
There was a comedian that once said, in the beginning was the word, and the word was no. And you definitely get that feel from Christianity sometimes. It's like, it's a bunch of rules of what you can't do. But I mean, that's incorrect. Even if you're being faithful to it, I think, you know, again, then going back to theology of the body, is like, there's the purgative, the illuminative, and the genitive. No, I'm joking, not genitive, that's a tense in ancient Greek. There's 3 stages, and there's purgative, which is following the rules,
Yeah.
and only following the rules. And, you know, that's not good if you're only doing that, but it's a great place to start.
Right.
Because the rules, the laws that we've been given that we must obey, are more just pointing out how to get to pleasure, how to get to everlasting life, how to get to, you know, this you know, ecstasy of awesomeness. Hey,
Great name for a band.
Yes, because they've got the ecstasy.
Copyright.
Yeah,
Ecstasy of awesomeness.
that's going to be my band. Stations.
Just make sure they don't typo, and it's called the awesomeness of ecstasy.
Oh yeah, we don't want that. But well,
No.
okay, I'm not going to go into it. So what was I talking about?
Well,
So there's a purgative stage, and so
Right.
it's good to be following that. But what we're looking for is real pleasure.
Right.
Now we get pleasure from things like banoffee pie because banoffee pie is delicious.
Because Olivia insisted that we eat the whole thing.
Yeah, well, no, we gave her a little bit. Anyway, it was. And so banoffee pie is a good thing. We should all eat banoffee pie. However, if we put banoffee pie in the place of, say, I don't know, God, or even in the place of a decent meal, that's
Right.
not good. You're now ruining banoffee pie. You're now giving banoffee pie a bad name. Stop doing that.
So you're saying that we can't have desserts as a substitute for dinner?
You can't have it. Well, I mean,
Is
as
that-
long
is
as
that
you also have
morally
the
wrong?
dinner.
That's the whole podcast in itself.
Morals. No, I'm not getting into morals. But to
No,
talk
but
pleasure.
I guess to go back to our conversation from before, we've been talking a lot about
Manners.
manners. No. We've been talking a lot about. This is what happens when you force feed yourself things that aren't good. About how there's kind of a hierarchy of things that could be good or pleasurable. So, for instance, you know, watching eating a piece of banoffee pie is pleasurable. But
It's a good
surely surely it's on a different scale of pleasure to you know, the intimacy of love, of making love, something like that. Jess, sort this one out.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. And also,
Or even listening to a great piece of composition of music.
or like, you know, if we're going to go on a spiritual plane, then mass, because, you know, that's the most
You have a
perfect.
spiritual plane.
Yeah, it gets me places real quick. You know,
Gets me
I'm getting high on my spiritual plane, going to mass. Yeah, going to mass and going to a really high mass. Actually, I had a pretty good experience.
Sorry, just after the whole
Yeah,
high thing.
I'm not good at it. Last time it was the whole crap yourself situation. Now it's getting high in a spiritual plane.
I'm just imagining a high man.
Getting high during mass. Well, there was incense, and I don't think it was
Okay.
incense. You know what I'm saying? No. So we went to. I was in Melbourne, and I went to St Patrick's Cathedral,
Ooh, yes.
and there was a mass done by the Knights of the Holy Sepulchre.
Oh my gosh.
My word! So it's
So
a
much
19th.
pomp.
It was a 19th century. Well, there wasn't even. There was a 19th century Gothic cathedral to start off with, so it looks like legit. All the windows are stained glass yellow, so there's this golden hue. They have the incense. There's 2 bishops, a cardinal, 4 priests, a whole like male voice choir, and then like all these. And then like I was in this mass, and like the liturgy was just so beautiful,
Right.
And then the homily was just so like it all just tied together, this musical amazingness, and it's like that's something special. Right there.
Yeah.
I'm going to the same mass actually. They're coming to Auckland this Saturday, and I'm going to be going to that sung mass. And I'm like, it's not going to be as good because our cathedral's tiny.
But is it less pleasure? I guess I would say no. But the thing that we're wondering, I guess, in this podcast and trying to address is that oftentimes in life we seek pleasures that are kind of our go-to pleasures. They're quite easily accessed, and they often actually don't necessarily lead to satisfaction. There might be a quick gratification of the thing that you're desiring. Okay, so I guess that's the first thing. And the other thing I guess we're wondering is like, how much do those lesser pleasures represent the thing that we're actually after? Because
Jesus addresses this on a number of occasions. A couple of weeks ago with the Bread of Life discourse, he says to them, yesterday I fed you with bread. I can give you the bread where you will never go hungry again. And they give us this bread. And he's like,
give me some of that bread.
It's my body. I want you to chew my flesh. And they're like, I want you to stop hanging around with that Jesus. He's a bad influence. He's disgusting. That's disgusting. And I think what is key in that is that ultimate pleasure, never feeling hungry, never suffering, that's pleasure, right? Or it's a kind of pleasure. It actually, there is a suffering involved. There is a getting over of my own iniquities, or in the sense of a meal. So it's like I could go to Macca's and get a cheeseburger it's cheap, it's quick, it'll fill me up, or I could go home and I could cook a roast.
Right.
I could learn
time preparing the pork crackle.
Yeah.
Salt it.
And then it's you've got this vastly superior meal,
right?
And also there is a pleasure in the creation of it. However, in order to create it, you need to learn how to create it. You need to buy the right ingredients. You need to spend time cooking it.
Yes, and I guess this is so. There's that discussion. So there's the greater pleasures and how it's actually inherently good for us to seek something that is a greater pleasure, or that takes maybe more effort or more work.
Yeah.
And then there's also the side of this discussion, which is how do we stop ourselves from falling into not just lesser pleasures, but what seems like an illicit pleasure? Obviously there are some obvious ones: drugs, pornography. But when you look at all of those vices, and even in pornography, you can see there is a search for intimacy.
Yeah.
That's happening in that exchange.
Yes.
And that somebody is really struggling there. And so I guess in a way it's about setting yourself, or firstly being aware that that's what's going on, but I'm some superhuman freak who just, I don't actually need real love from a real person. I don't watch porn because I'm searching for intimacy. I'm not that weak, I just do it because I've got some spare time. So it's about being honest with yourself, I guess, firstly.
If you're in your situation where you find yourself going for these lesser pleasures, or things that are illicit a bit, or overeating even, when you're going for that cheap pleasure, I want to watch an episode of Friends just to pass the time, nothing wrong with that. But if you're only watching episodes of Friends, you're missing out on a greater thing. It's okay, what is it that I'm actually looking for?
Yeah,
because
Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things. So it's having that self-reflection, that moment. Okay, right, I know that this isn't the best thing. So what is it I'm looking for? It's is it I'm looking for a taste, and a taste is fleeting. Have a glass of water, all of a sudden you don't want that taste anymore.
That's the thing about food. We just ate this blueperfect pie.
Yeah.
That's all the noise. And it's gone.
Yeah.
There are a couple of crumbs. They weren't exactly that pleasurable. There was no sweetness in them. but they remind me of the pleasure of eating the full thing. But even so, I'm going to poop it out, and it's going to be like...
Yeah.
I'm not exactly going to be like, oh, that was the last bit of pleasure I received from that banoffee pie. So I guess pleasure is fleeting, but I guess the key is if you seek the things, like when Jesus was saying, that what I wish is that you would seek me, or seek the living water that will not leave you thirsty, and finding the equivalent for that in our own spiritual lives. Obviously, being fed in the Mass, being fed in your relationships, I guess ultimately as well, if you can, to be fed in your work life, your recreation, maybe sports, music, that kind of stuff as well.
It's something that uses you up. So it's something that you want to give yourself to. Like in marriage, you want to give yourself to another person and then to develop a relationship and like to make it grow into something bigger and greater, like children preferably.
Yes.
And then but you want to do that in your hobbies, you want to do that in your work life, and it doesn't mean you have to be like all work has to be vocational. You can be doing something like collecting rubbish, but as long as you're doing it to the fullness of that job, like that Luther quote I always give, a Christian shoemaker doesn't make shoes with crosses on; he makes really good shoes. And it's about doing the job properly, and that's where we find like real pleasure. I really gave myself today. I remember when I was working as a labourer, like the best days was when I completed like putting up a post and rail fence. Like I finished it. It's like I was absolutely exhausted. I was starving. I wanted to go to bed, but I'd done something. And there was a pleasure in that you don't get from playing a video game, that you don't get from like watching an episode of Friends.
Yeah.
Now those things aren't wrong, and like when I get home, I watch an episode of Friends just to relax, or to just chill my brain out. But like I cooked a lasagna last night, and I watched on my phone whilst I was doing it just to keep my mind at rest. But there was something good about doing the actual cooking rather than just sticking a pie in the oven 20 minutes later eating it. It's being intentional with our life. Yeah. Like, what am I eating?
Yeah, not just falling into, habits of eating and falling into habits. And I guess that's what leads to vices often, is that we're not intentional about it. And that we end up, like, even with smoking, you might find that you become addicted to it just because you're hanging out with friends and they all smoke, and therefore it's like, I haven't really thought about it. I guess I'll try smoking. I mean...
And also, life's not just functional either. Food isn't just there to give you nutrients. And I heard someone the other day who was talking about, like, they're saying that they think religious life is actually just sexual repression. It's like, oh no. It's like, you need sex to release energy, to release stress, and like, that's not what sex is for. And if that's what you're using sex for, you've missed the point. And like then, because where does that lead you? It's like, sex is just to get rid of stress. And it's like, okay, one night stands are okay, prostitution's okay, because it's purely functional. Yeah. It's about being intentional, and in that intention, you're limiting yourself, but you're also growing more and getting this, this everlasting joy, which will cause a little bit of a strife initially, but in the long run, it'll cause a greater joy.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a pretty good place for us to wrap up.
Yeah.
Also, just remembered I have a doctor's appointment I need to get to, so I should probably head off. But thank you for joining us for this podcast today. Yeah. Make sure that when you seek pleasure, you are doing it in a way that's intentional, and obviously try and avoid the illicit stuff.
If you're doing
Don't stress the stuff that's lesser, the pale in comparison kind of stuff. But the good stuff is where it's at.
So stay tuned for more of this, and pray for us, and God bless. Hey guys, thanks for watching the podcast. I've got good news. It just got a whole lot easier to search for us online.
All you got to do is search Gregorian Chat into YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, and Player FM for those who are on Android.
Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. See you later. God bless.
You know what I haven't tried to do in ages? An arm fart.
I haven't tried to do that at all.
Have you never?
I've never done it successfully.
I actually can't do it anymore.
Oh. Maybe it's like there's a kind of thing. Yeah. Anyway, catch you later. God bless. Yeah.